you, Madam Speaker. And it's with a little bit of trepidation and emotion that I come to speak on this particular bill, which I do support. Madam Speaker, I want to go back to my maiden speech. It's always a good point of reference for people. And I mentioned there that the virtues my mother had shared with me and I've adopted, the most important virtues were love, compassion and tolerance. I say again, love, compassion and tolerance. However, I must admit my commitment to tolerance is tested when I hear about assaults on our frontline service workers. Like others, I have to control my anger, disappointment and sheer abhorrence that anyone would look to harm our wonderful frontline workers, including those emergency workers who are actually trying to help and care for people with a spirit of love and compassion. Now, Madam Speaker, I need to declare a very personal interest in this debate. Noting my son Fergus, who is actually here to witness my maiden speech, is currently a hard-working and committed paramedic here in Darwin with the St John Ambulance Service. So let me give you a parent's perspective on how we value, care for and worry about the safety of our children, no matter how old they are. By way of background for honourable members, my darling wife Mary Lou and I were blessed to have our son Fergus born here in Darwin in 1995. And like the children of many other parents, he and his younger sister Nadia became the centre of our universe. Yes, in the early days, Mary Lou and myself learnt to live tired, raising what I can only say were boisterous, mischievous, but absolutely delightful children. Both went to Leanya Primary School, where my wife Mary Lou also joined as a primary school teacher under the guidance of that great educator and renowned principal, Henry Gray. They both progressed to Dripstone Middle School and then on to Casuarina Senior College. At Casuarina Senior College, Fergus got accepted into the Health School of Excellence. He was always interested in the health field. I wasn't too sure why, he didn't get it from me, and considered many career options, including physiotherapy and others. But eventually he chose to complete a Bachelor of Paramedicine at Monash University. Following the completion of his degree, he went on to join the Victorian Ambulance Service and went on to becoming a fully qualified paramedic. Now, a couple of years ago, he decided to come back to the Territory and was warmly welcomed by St John as a fully qualified, experienced and talented paramedic who had the added benefit of already being familiar with living in the Territory. He continues to grow his skills and is working towards becoming a highly skilled intensive care paramedic here in the NT. Madam Speaker, I love my son. And naturally, we have chats about how his day has been and how he's going. I have a wonderful photo of a baby being held by my smiling son, which he had to deliver at home of some parents, where the baby had decided to come into this world a little bit earlier than expected. He's also called upon to successfully treat people to save them from severe heart and stroke attacks, much to the gratitude of the person involved and their families. However, as a frontline paramedic, he witnesses and actively gets involved in many traumatic accidents, including, sadly, some of which involve the deaths of children in car accidents, as well as the treatment of many domestic violence victims, including murders. Whilst Fergus is the consummate professional and never breaches the privacy of his patients, you can understand why I am keen for him to tell me about these experiences as part of his own well-being. Yes, St John have their own post-trauma counselling services for their paramedics, but Mum and Dad are always there to listen and care for their son. So it is no wonder that I sought my son's view about what he thought about people who assault and or spit on paramedics during the course of their work. He couldn't have been clearer. He said, in his opinion, Dad, the worst thing for him and other paramedics was someone deliberately spitting on them, be it the patient or someone else at the scene. I emphasise the word deliberate, as he accepts that some patients may do it involuntarily, just like they may vomit. He says he would much prefer to be punched rather than spat on. And he openly says that as a professional, he and his colleagues have to control their urge to strike back in defence. I'm unsure that if I was there at the time that I would have the same self-control. As a father, I would be absolutely wanting to protect my son any way I could. We also need to appreciate that paramedics and other frontline emergency service workers are continually going into dangerous situations on a regular basis. I know, for example, that Fergus and other paramedics are always wary when they have to go down into known violent hotspots, such as Fawcett Court in Malac and Victoria Drive in Grey. Many a time they have to wait for a police escort before they can enter these neighbourhoods to treat some victims. And in some cases, due to a high workload currently confronting police, that police escort may take up to 3 hours to arrive. So even some genuine patients are having to suffer from a delay in being able to be treated due to the potential threat of violence and assault on our frontline emergency workers. This, Madam Speaker, is totally unacceptable. And it is time we swing the justice pendulum in favour of our frontline emergency services, genuine patients, and for the 98% of Territorians who do the right thing, rather than pandering to the small minority who believe they can assault our frontline workers with minimal consequences, if any. Enough is enough. Labor has failed these frontline workers. Now let's widen this discussion out to all workers. Now I recall on Tuesday that the member for Gwadja had the temerity to say, and I quote, "The Labor Party is the party for workers." I say again, the Labor Party is the party for workers. Let me also quote another statement that he said in the same speech, which I consider actually applies to this claim about being the party for workers. And that quote was, "This is complete nonsense. You are right, Member for Gwadja. Your claim is complete nonsense." Madam Speaker, this out-of-touch Labor opposition has failed workers. Many of us will recall the surveys of the last couple of years of the police members conducted by the NT Police Association. I don't recall the results of those surveys saying that the overall membership thought the Labor Party was the party for workers. In fact, I recall that the overall police membership felt totally left down by the former Labor government, and that Labor have failed them and the Territory. And let's just go back to some of the stats that were provided earlier about police assaults. 9 months to the 31st of March 2024. 212 police officers assaulted. 56 assaults included bodily fluids such as spit and blood. 114 assaults included bodily force such as hitting, kicking, punching and biting. 40 assaults included weapons. 28 police officers required medical attention and one was hospitalised. And let's look at other categories too. There were 1,000, this is out of the 2022-23 financial year. There was 1,561 assaults by patients or their family members on staff at territory hospitals. Totally unacceptable, totally unacceptable. Public housing safety officers for the financial year to 31 March 2024. 36 serious incidents or reported physical assaults. 23 assaults on transit officers. This is wrong. We just can't have it. So, while we're talking about that, let's go to the views of workers across the whole of the territory. And this is for a party that is so-called the Party for Workers. Maybe they should listen to this. And when I say across the whole of the territory, I mean including those in Darwin, Palmerston, Coolangatta, Humpty Doo, Katherine, Tennant Creek and Alice Springs. These workers had the chance to voice their lack of confidence in the former, and I love that word every time it's mentioned, former Labor government in the recent general election. And didn't those territory-wide workers shout it out loud and clear? Labor had failed them and they urgently wanted a change of government. Labor had failed them and they urgently wanted a change of government. Like the majority of Territorians, they welcomed a united CLP team that had a clear plan to reduce crime, rebuild our economy and to restore our lifestyle. And a clear element in that plan was to immediately get to Parliament to pass legislation to introduce, let me quote the exact words, new minimum mandatory sentencing for assaulting a frontline worker in our plan. Now, let's look around this assembly to see the result of the general election. Madam Speaker, I generally believe I'm a caring person and I do care about the health of our Labor Party members and I want them to be an effective opposition. Hence why I offered each of them a free hearing test last week so they could stop being deaf to the concerns of the majority of Territorians. That offer still stands. However, I'm also concerned that they may inadvertently incur a neck injury. Because now when they look across the chamber to see the result of the 2024 election and they want to look at the extent of the government benches, and it's not just a look-ahead exercise at the Chief Minister and a couple of other members. No, it requires a full twist of the neck past 90 degrees from the member of Barkly round to the member of Drysdale and myself. Can I caution the members of the Labor opposition to do this carefully so as not to incur a hypertension injury? Very concerned about them. Now, let's get back to the concern for all workers and their views and support for this legislation. When I was campaigning, I met with many workers and businesses operating in or living in Karama, Malak and Nucky Lagoon. Many of them said they were fed up with the escalating crime and antisocial behaviour that was being left to grow, unfettered by the former, I love saying that word, former Labor government. Now, just recently I met with the owners and staff of the Malak OTR service station. This service station has been subjected to continual theft of goods and threats of serious violence against its staff over the last 5 years. And I also got the Minister for Housing to come and visit this same service station when he came with me. It has got to the stage where staff just accept that adults and youths will come in around 7 to 8 times a day to steal product from their shop. But because of fear from assault, the staff stay behind the secured cash register area. Recently, 2 staff resigned and the owners are unable to recruit or relocate staff to fill these positions. If this continues, the owners will look to change its operating model, where customers can only pay and purchase goods via a small night window for the full period of operation from morning to late evening. The owners are also considering closing down the whole operation which would be devastating for local residents as they will have to go elsewhere to fill up their cars with petrol and purchase convenience store products. Likewise, there have been violent attacks against workers at the Karama service station over the same period, including the stabbing of staff. Totally unacceptable. Just 2 weeks ago, a group of 10 to 15 youths ran riot through the Karama shopping plaza, running into businesses such as the news agency, the chemist and the cafe, threatening staff and stealing what they could. My electorate office immediately called the police. Unfortunately, the offenders quickly moved on before the police arrived. Madam Speaker, workers are demanding that there be consequences, and this government has listened to them and is delivering for them. Now, I've heard from the opposition, I've heard from the crossbenchers. We're putting this through on urgency. They would like lay it on the table at 30 days, let them scrutinise it, let them think about it, even though we went out with all of this to the electorate, in advance to the electorate, and we got an overwhelming result. But no, they think it's better if they could leave it there for 30 days. They could go and talk to various people. They could get their own little citizen advice bureaus, have a little powwow chat and come up with whatever evidence they could get. Well, let me tell you about the Labor Party. Member Fong Lim's not here, but he would maybe understand.
Member for Karama.
Sorry.
Sorry, you
Chair.
can't refer to...
No, sorry, through the Chair. Member Fong Lim would understand the need for data. So, Madam Speaker, if it was coming from, journals such as The Lancet or Nature, I could understand that. But the Labor Party, true to form, goes to their own authoritative source that they've always used and will continue to use, and that is the journal Slagnet. And so I think when they come forward, they need to be writing under all their data, whatever month it is. Slagnet, October 24. Slagnet, June 2023. Whatever they can put up. Because not only is the Labor Party here, it's the Albanese government. They use the same authoritative source. So do Queensland Labor and Labor all around the country. And for those who don't know that authoritative source, Slagnet, it's an acronym, but I'll tell you what it stands for. It stands for sounded like a good number at the time. And that's what they come forward with. They use this all the time. So much for evidence. I wouldn't trust it. But let me get also a bit serious about this. If we did go out for 30 days and they came back here, I would bet any money that the Labor opposition, despite all their consultations, the Labor opposition will stick to their view that all of our legislation should be rejected. I would honestly think that would happen. And I'm pretty sure our CLP team would stick by their conviction that this legislation has been validated and supported by the majority of Territorians. And apart from some time-wasting divisions, in 30 days' time, the legislation would be passed 17-7 by this Assembly. That's what I believe would happen. So, Madam Speaker, I say again, in our plan we said we will introduce legislation that will provide new minimum mandatory sentencing for assaulting a frontline worker. And the workers of the Northern Territory want it passed now, not in another month, including my loving son Fergus, a wonderful frontline paramedic. So I've gone a bit shorter than normal, but I'm just feeling a bit emotional about this. As I said at the start, I am committed to love, compassion and tolerance, but we also need justice to protect our workers. Madam Speaker, I support this bill. Thank you.